All right, can journaling give you more mental clarity? Yes, but the question is how? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down a centuries-old method that I learned after reading an obscure biography about someone who's actually very influential in the 20th century. So what is the Catherine method? In the 1930s, during the Spanish Civil War, a priest by the name of Jose Maria Escriva miraculously survived and escaped the communist regime in Spain. And during this time, he kept a journal that, in that journal, he would call his entries Catalinas, or in English, Catherines. And as I was reading this biography of his life, I kept asking myself, what does it mean? Like, what does he mean by these Catalinas, these Catherines that he's talking about writing in his notebook? And as the biography unfolds, it's clear that Escriva was implementing a system from St. Catherine of Siena, and he refined and implemented that system for his own use. And this framework served him while he was in hiding for over a year in the red zone of Spain, almost as long as Anne Frank was in hiding in the Netherlands while keeping her own journal. And so I knew I had to try this framework, this setup, because like all systems, you know they work when they're put under stress, especially the stress of a life or death situation. So no matter where you are in life, I know this method can be helpful for you. It's already been helpful for me. So let's get right into it. The first part of this Catherine method is to write a dedication for your notebook, right? So not just having a dedicated notebook, but writing a dedication in the same way that an author would for a book that they were publishing. With St. Jose Maria Escriva, his dedication was to St. Catherine of Siena. And why this was powerful and important for him was this allowed him to say he was writing to Catherine of Siena. In the same way that Catherine of Siena was very bold and powerful. If you don't know the whole backstory of Catherine of Siena, she brought the Avignon popes home, which is an incredible and amazing feat. She's known as one of the doctors of the church. So by St. Jose Maria Escriva dedicating his journals to her, he was forcing himself not to just write timidly to himself or write to no one. He was writing to someone. And I think that is something that can be very powerful for anyone keeping a dedicated notebook, especially when you want more mental clarity. For me, you know, I've been keeping this Lenten journal. This is my Lenten notebook for this season, and I dedicated it to St. Joseph. And I've been doing a whole litany of St. Joseph and like devotional consecration to St. Joseph, and just having this and thinking about what would St. Joseph say here. St. Joseph was famously quiet, right? He didn't say anything in the New Testament, but he lived a very obedient life of strength and endurance. And just having a dedication to him and going, okay, I'm not just writing this to myself. If there was another person on the other side, if there was a patron saint of this notebook, it would be St. Joseph. That has changed for me how I've kept notes in this notebook. I think this is actually from the devotional that I'm doing to St. Joseph right now, which is to be courageous is to love the good more than you fear evil and suffering. It's things like that. Oh man. Okay, the second part of this framework is place and posture. Where are you going to take this notebook, and what is going to be the posture that you take physically when writing? Jose Maria Escriva was noted for writing and keeping a journal while kneeling. So while kneeling in prayer, he would be writing in his journal. I've been noticing this actually a lot more just in the last year in a lot of my local parishes and the local chapels, especially during adoration, people bringing in pocket notebooks and going to the kneeler and journaling. It's I haven't personally seen this in my life until this past year, but this past year, again, I've really picked up going to adoration weekly. So maybe it's been a thing. It's clearly been a thing in Spain, at least for some time. But choosing a place and a posture, this can really change up your journaling, especially if you feel stuck, if it's you're sitting at the kitchen table or you're sitting at your desk and you're feeling like nothing's coming to mind. This doesn't have to necessarily mean going into a cathedral and finding a kneeler and going before the sacraments, though I would recommend that. This could be something as simple as saying, this is going to be my notebook that I take on the trail. And every week I'm going to go and walk a particular trail and note things that I see, note thoughts that come to mind. Having a dedication to where you will take those notes and what posture you will be in, right? So in the case of being out in nature, maybe it's something like you will not sit down while writing. That can be a challenge, but that could also get the pen moving, get ideas moving a lot easier. And for all my parents, I know I struggle with this as well. Me journaling in my kitchen is not a place of peace and quiet. But what I have found, and I've talked about this in previous videos, giving my kids pen and paper so they can write or pretend like they're journaling, or actually, I guess, practice journaling in their own way. While I'm journaling, while that is a different product and I get a different sort of thing out of that, for me, that buys me maybe 15, 20 minutes of time where I can be journaling and having a restful moment, or as restful as it can be with 2 kids. But plan this in advance. Plan where you're going to be using your notebook, and plan what that posture is going to look like, and change up your posture, especially if you've only ever journaled while seated at a desk or like a table or something. Find a different posture. Another one I used to do years ago was I would sit in an elevated lotus position on like a foam block. That was actually very helpful as well. So a lot of different ideas here. The most important part is that you commit to a place and posture in your notebook. Part 3 of this method is to write boldly like Catherine, or this is how St. Josemaria Escriva put it, was write boldly like Catherine, or in this instance, put on the voice of someone else. So now you're evolving one step kind of further from the dedication line where you're thinking about who you're writing to. Now you're going to try to write in the same voice as that person. It doesn't have to necessarily be the person that you are dedicating the notebook to. It could be different. For me, I have put down my dedication to St. Joseph, but I have tried to write like Josemaria Escriva, and then in effect, I guess I'm imitating Catherine of Siena. And while you're doing this, be looking at what you say that you wouldn't normally say in your own voice, and ask yourself, if I was Catherine of Siena, if I was Josemaria Escriva, if I was one of these great people, one of these voices that I'm taking on, what would I say about myself? 2 things that I like to write down is what is disordered or malformed, and then how will I move myself? How will I take action to reform those things in myself? Finally, and I think this is really crucial about putting someone else's voice on, is I think you need to put movement to it as well. So plan a pilgrimage, plan some type of movement. Don't just put your head in the same headspace as that person, but ask yourself, how can you put yourself in the same place or in the same state of mind by movement, by planning some type of movement. With Josemaria Escriva, he would take a river walk often in Burgos while the Spanish Civil War was going on, after he was able to successfully escape the communist zone. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe you want to go full St. Catherine and say, hey, I want to walk from Italy to France, or maybe you want to go the more Hilary Belloc move and go walk from France to Italy. Even here where I live in rural Idaho, we have a trail that will take you from Montana to Washington State that passes right through our own state, and it will take you by a very nice little Jesuit chapel that was built like 150 years ago. So don't just imitate someone's voice. Ask yourself how you can get into motion or movement like that person, and then write in the voice of that person. If you guys are liking this video, please hit the subscribe button. It really does help me out a lot, and do like this video. That will help more people find it and enjoy it. The 4th part of this method is 2-stage capture. What this means is that you don't just rely on the dedicated notebook, but you also have something like a pocket notebook. This is my Lockbee pocket journal, and in here I've been keeping my field notes as of late. This is the notebook that comes with me pretty much everywhere, every single day. Whereas my dedicated notebook, this notebook, which has been my Lenten notebook, this only comes with me to like Mass, adoration, and then is otherwise here at my desk when I do some more like processing stuff around my devotionals. By having a 2-capture system, when things come up in the middle of the day or in the middle of the week where I'm not in this setting where I would normally use my dedicated notebook, I can go to my field notes, drop it in here, and then trust in my review, which I've talked about in previous videos, that this will get migrated into my devotional notebook. And that'll actually help me synthesize better how I'm thinking about things out in the daily sort of world in my regular life. The lesson that I learned from St. Josemaria Escriva was that when he went to escape the communist zone, it actually took him a few months to like weave out of Madrid and then get to Barcelona, and then from Barcelona get over the Pyrenees to Andorra, and then from Andorra back down to Burgos. It was this crazy journey where he wasn't able to carry 5 notebooks with him. He had 1 journal, 1 sort of notebook. And then at the end of the war, thankfully, he was able to recover the trunk that he had in Madrid and then start reprocessing all those notes again. And I'm like, I just could not imagine going like 3 years basically between being able to synchronize all my notebooks But the good news is it will work. This will work whether you're doing a review daily, which hopefully you're doing, or at least weekly. But even if there's more time in between, even if it feels like you go for a few weeks or even a few months. Jose Maria Escriva was famous for like writing after 2 months. He's like, I have not written my Catherines. I need to write a Catherine. And I think the most important part of this two-stage capture method is that you are capturing at least something. You're writing down just little details or little bits about the journey. One of my favorite notes in the notebook is just them talking about when they finally reached Andorra, how good it felt to hear chapel bells chiming, sort of announcing prayer, announcing the mass, especially after not having heard those for almost 2 years. It's sometimes capturing that feeling in a notebook somewhere and then being able to go back and then process that feeling later. Because a lot of times when we're going through things, even if it's things as simple as challenges at work or challenges at home, it doesn't always have to be life or death, but it's good to know that this works in those life or death scenarios, because then we can trust them more in our everyday scenarios. But keep capturing things in a little pocket notebook, in a little notebook that's with you at all times. Capture the little details, the little feelings, practice that, and then use your dedicated notebook in your Catherine method, so to speak, to then process those things. So two-stage capture. This is something that I had already been doing, but then to watch someone else do it, someone else who's lived a far more exciting and dangerous life than me, and see his successes with it, have just continued to encourage and inspire me to keep this sort of two-stage capture going. The last point of this method is thematic writing, or keeping a theme when you're writing, or more of like a structure, if that is helpful for you. I think back to last year, I made a video about a fighter pilot with last name Ansaldo that kept his notebooks sort of like a mission log, right? Even when he was doing daily things like going to play golf or having beers and shrimp with friends. Having that theme of like the mission log for every single day was very helpful for Ansaldo, versus someone like Ignatius of Loyola, who has prompts for his spiritual exercises, which I made a video on, I think about 3 years ago. I will link these videos down in the description below. That is a very different structure, prompting for journaling and thinking, but the point is having a structure that works for you. And you can try different structures throughout your Catherines, throughout your little notebook that you've dedicated, and try them on as different conversation starters. It's kind of almost like dating that person that you've dedicated your notebook to and figuring out like, hey, does it work for me to talk about this particular topic or idea or thing in this particular way, like keeping a mission log notebook, right? Or is it more helpful to have spiritual exercise prompts, things like that? I think in the modern day, one of the books that I really have enjoyed reading in the last decade is Extreme Ownership by Leif Babin and Jocko Willink. I think this connects actually very well to the spiritual exercises in the sense that you're supposed to ask yourself and take ownership of your faults. Like, where have you fallen short? A lot of times I find the things that are blocking me up or like keeping me from being able to write are actually me stopping myself from taking ownership of a fault. And once I do that, everything else starts kind of coming out afterwards. One of my other favorite things about the thematic writing, especially in the early months of the war, was Jose Maria Escriva couldn't talk about the Eucharist because that would have revealed that he was a Catholic priest, and they were executing Catholic priests in the street. So he would refer to the Eucharist as Don Manuel, Emmanuel, like God with us. And one of the fun themes of those notebooks from the early days of the war was that he keeps writing these little notes and letters, not just to himself, but to his friends, talking about Don Manuel. I could just imagine the communist censors trying to figure out, like, who is this Don Manuel? Apparently they never figured it out because he was not captured, and he obviously escaped. But even just having little nicknames or fun like bits, like it's wild to say that that's fun now, because obviously that was probably not so fun for Escriva while him and his companions were all hiding from the communists. But you can take some liberties here to give nicknames to things like the Eucharist. I might actually adopt that myself and calling him Don Manuel for a little bit. Whatever it is, having a theme is, I think, so important. Just giving yourself play with structure and then also seeing how other people structure it. Ultimately, Escriva wasn't making this up out of nothing. He was taking inspiration from the saints, again, Catherine of Siena. But there are so many saints that you could take inspiration from, whether it's Jose Maria Escriva, Catherine of Siena. Last year I read Saint Therese of Lisieux's Story of a Soul. The way that she writes and kept her sort of life story was so different than either of those two. I'm reminded of a quote by C.S. Lewis, I believe it was. How monotonously alike have all the great tyrants and conquerors been. How gloriously different are the saints. If you made it this far in the video, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and leave a comment down below with one of the patron saints or someone who would inspire you enough to be the person you would dedicate a notebook to, or someone whose voice you would try in your own journaling practice. Leave it down in the comments below. Also, I want to let you guys know down in the description below, I'm gonna have a link to a workshop that I'm co-hosting this coming week. There'll be more details down there, but if you're specifically a man who is feeling stuck, I'm co-hosting a workshop with my friend Wes Lambert, who is a professional and licensed therapist. We are going to be talking about just work and worth as it relates to men. So if that interests you, check out the details down in the description below. With that, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed to this channel, and if you haven't yet, please do so. It does help me out. And be kind, both in life and in the comments below. Like this video to send good vibes across the internet. We will do it again soon. Later.